Podcast, and got a great episode this morning, and I'm really excited to interview our person today. And what I want to tell you just a little bit about her background, and you'll know why I wanted to get her on the show. So this is Veronica Yanhs. She is the founder and CEO of Business Laid Bare, and she helps underrepresented growth stage startup founders create and streamline internal and revenue focused operations so that their sales, marketing, and their teams can be more effective, up to 20 times more. So when I read something like this and I talked to Veronica, I said, this is definitely a person I've got to get on the show. So welcome to the show, Veronica. And if you could please just tell us a little bit about your background, I'd like to hear more about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And what an intro. Did I write that?
Somebody did.
I think I did. But yeah, so about me, we can get into that later. But about me, I was never meant to be an entrepreneur. I was supposed to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, something that had a path. So I was raised really traditionally Chinese. So my parents were not risk takers. Given that they were immigrants and stuff, it makes sense what their ambitions and their desires are. And so when I
Sure.
went to Stanford and ended up walking with the product design department, because I ended up creating my own major because the dean of engineering was like, we have 144 majors. Why can't you pick one? And I said, because if I'm going to be designing products, I want to make sure it's done sustainably. I'm from
Mhm.
Oregon, so we love our environment. So I'm like, sustainable innovation is important to me. But then if I design something, I also want to make money from it. So business practices came into view. So I ended up creating my own major, and it was basically a foreshadow of me just needing to do my own thing. Like all of my life, I've heard that I'm supposed to do this and do that and do all the other things. And the one voice that I need to hear from the most that was not there was mine. And so when I took
Hmm.
control of that, it was when I really was excited to see what opportunities were out there. So I'm a project manager at heart, ended up doing a lot of consulting for Nike and Apple, and I just made my way there and eventually became my own business owner because I was doing three people's jobs as my own person because it was the right and natural thing to do. So we can get more
Mhm.
into that later. But how does that intro sound?
No, it's really pretty interesting. So I certainly understand cultural background and all those things and immigration, what have you, and then trying to find your own path. But I think then what you might be able to identify is over the years, what could you tell us are some of the biggest changes that you've seen based on what you got at Stanford or then in your terms of your career and your company as well?
What's really interesting about the world that I'm in, operations, is that I liken us to like the middle child. We're just as important, but yet we get passed over for other things. And those changes seem to be, I guess there's really no change. Like this just seems to be a constant that whether it's in the business world or the startup world, it just seems that operations is a
Mm.
secondary priority next to sales and marketing. And so this is why I'm here doing what it is that I'm doing and coming on all these podcasts to show that actually operations is critical. It is critical to all the other things that your business and organization needs to do, especially with team members and employee retention. So that's one of
Mm.
the biggest changes that I've seen that I'm out to change myself is that there is no priority for us.
And it's very essential. I mean, operations means if it's not working well, then everything is else is going to fall apart. And I think we've had a conversation before and previously. I think you bring a human face to it, which is really an interesting part and really important because you just hit a key element there. I think retention and retaining people means that if things are going smoothly, then people will stay at a company. They often feel like if things are not going well, something is wrong and the company is falling apart in some ways. Could you identify then maybe some of the hot growth areas and things that you feel would be essential for operations today in the contemporary business scene?
For sure. A lot of people are no longer wanting to subscribe to that narrative of grinding. And I never did either. So, fun fact about me is that I was told that I would never make it as an entrepreneur because I didn't work 12 to 16 hours a day.
Mhm.
in Silicon Valley. And I'm thinking in my head, and this is also who I am naturally, like, if I have to work so hard to grind at something, it must mean that I'm not doing it in the most efficient or smart way. So
Correct.
grinding is there's a difference between grinding and hustling. And to me, grinding, there is no badge of honor for that. And so what I'm loving is that there are more and more people opening up to the idea of ease, of efficiency, because ultimately when everything is working, like I'm looking like far down the line, like operations is very much a quality of life thing. It gives the people that the operations touches, so whether it's the internal team members, the leadership team, and even the customers, clients, and buyers, better quality of life overall. When I say better quality of life, like, wouldn't it be so amazing to be able to just take a break from the business? Or if you had to fly across the country last minute on a whim to go take care of a loved one because they're on their last days here on earth, wouldn't you want to be fully present with them and fully present in doing what it is that you need to do rather than worrying about your business or going to France and being on your phone and making sure that all clients are taken care of? These are all true stories that we've worked with clients on. And it's not something that people talk about a lot. So that's why I say that quality of life is important, because what's the point of running a business if you're constantly attached to it like that? And that if you're not always like meddling with it or touching it, that it's going to somehow implode if you like look away for a few days, because that's actually what happens in a lot of businesses.
It's interesting that you say that because I can relate. There are stories that I can bring up on things that, yeah, you are missing out on life and your business is taking away from it because there are a lot of people who work a lot of hours and go, so it's like they're working hard. Well, yeah, they're working inefficiently. I mean, I see that as well too. So since you have a little bit different view, and that's a real plus for your company as well, what would you recommend business owners to be thinking of when it comes to operations? And what kinds of things do you think you could recommend that they should be aware of that you could provide value for them?
For sure. So the difference between how we run our operations consultancy and to a lot of others is that we are people first, meaning we believe that operations is not about the apps or the automation or the tech or the software. It begins and ends actually with people, because behind the automation, the software and all that good stuff, it's like, who's behind all that? Who's starting it, who's managing it, who's running it. And when you create your operation strategy with a people first philosophy and approach, it means that you're taking into account how the person who's operating it works. And if you create the strategy that is in alignment with how they think, what gets them excited,
Mm.
how they work, what their zones of genius are, then that means that the learning curve, the adoption from old to new, is going to be so much easier. And they're actually going to be so much more excited to lean on that system because it makes sense to them than to go constantly ask somebody for help. Because we've had clients come to us saying that it's the Ask Dave show. Anytime somebody doesn't know how to do something, or there's a question or an uncertainty, everybody goes to the CEO. And wouldn't that be stressful and not sustainable for any business owner? But if they've been doing it for 20 years, I guess this is how you learn to manage, but it's not the ideal. So the number one thing, if you want to approach your operations in a really holistic way, is like, look at the people that are in charge of operating, because operations at the end of the day, I know, is a very opaque topic. A lot of my customers and clients are like, we know we need it, but that's about it. And operations is actually about the how in your business. You, as the leader, CEO, leadership team, whatever you have that you want to do, your goals, mission, purpose, that's your what. So your operations are make your what a reality, and hopefully that much faster when it's done right.
Could you break that down a little bit? In other words, what's the process then? Or perhaps you can talk about the types of things that you would offer business owners that has this unique way of approaching operations, and what kinds of things could you do for business people?
Absolutely. So the first thing that we always do, because I never want to make an assumption, is that we always audit our clients' business first. We want to know what we're working with. We want to know what's going well, what are areas of improvements, what are some gaps that we can fill in this assessment. We call it the assessment because it's not just telling you everything that's wrong, but it's telling you what could be better. And then here's how to do it with an action plan and roadmap so that nobody has to spin their wheels. We go in, we diagnose the business, we look at their people, we talk to them, we look at their tech, we ask the leadership questions, we do our own snooping, and then we give them an action plan. So this is where being a consultant comes in. Like, we don't necessarily work day to day with the team per se. We have our own like scope of work, the things that we've identified, and then we work with the teams to either give them the strategy so that they implement it or we do it for them, because ultimately actions speak louder than intentions. And if they've waited already like 5-10 years to do this, generally it takes us about 3 to 5 months to work with our clients to get them amazing results. And I can share with you the case studies link that we have on our website at the end of the show.
Sure, that
But
would be
ultimately, that's
helpful.
it.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And does this have something, just I was curious, since you went to Stanford, is this based on design thinking, or is this part of what you're doing in terms of what you offer business owners?
I would say that design thinking was something that has been a huge influence, like being human centered, thinking about the problem from every single angle. So what we learned was that, sure, engineering is great. Don't get me wrong. Engineering is important. Like, it's what makes the cars as efficient, not as polluting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then at the end of the day, that's underneath the hood. What the product design department really focused on was also usability. Like, the car could be as efficient as all can be, but if it doesn't appeal to how you want to use it, if the buttons are not in the right place, that means that the car wouldn't be so as appealing. So we take both into account, but ultimately at the end of the day, what is the usability of that? If it's really difficult to use the system because it's so convoluted, or if you are yourself, say, very, very visual, Mick, and I give you something that's not visual, then the time it takes for your brain to understand it already makes it so that you're not being set up for success. So, yes, you're right. Design thinking does come into that. And because it's so prevalent in what we do, it's ultimately about understanding humans at the end of the day to be successful.
Now, there's a number of things that I've really picked up in here, and I see what you're aiming for and what you're going for in terms of operations to be important, operations to be efficient, and sort of a human face to all of those things. And I think that there's a lot of companies that would really benefit from what you're able to share and what you're able to do. If they had been listening to what you have suggested here now, how would you suggest that they get a hold of you, and how would they start to work with you if they were interested?
Yeah, and the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about first before I do that is that your operations is what makes your team and your sales. And I know you said this at the beginning. The reason why I say this is because if you dedicated so much time to hiring team members or putting in dollars to your marketing and sales efforts, and suddenly everything all works together, is your business going to be able to serve your buyers, your clients, your customers with ease, sustainability, or are you going to burn out? We had a client come to us saying, "Why is operations important?" And when I said, "Well, if 20 people knocked on your door tomorrow, right? Say, what if you 20x your business tomorrow? How many clients could you realistically take on?" And she said, "2." Because she had no process for onboarding. Everything took a long time, no good project management. So, when I'm talking about operations, it's about how do we make your business run in a well-oiled way without it seeming robotic. But it's just, wouldn't it be so nice to know that, hey, if 10 people wanted to knock on your door tomorrow and pay you money, you could not leave any money on the table. And her goal for the year that we were working with her was to increase revenue. So isn't it kind of ironic that she wants to increase revenue, but out of the 20 people that she could have brought on, she can only take on 2. So I'm like, all those 18 other people could want their problems solved now, but they're not going to wait. They're going to go to somebody else. So that's why operations is so important. And what we've learned is that a lot of the leadership team, especially in a growing phase, like you started out your business usually with yourself or maybe a co-founder, which means it's very much a I situation. And then when you bring on more people and you're still working on the business, it's a we situation. But what I see is that a lot of the leadership team, they're acting as like the business house's foundation. So they're holding everything up, the foundation, the scaffolding, the framing. And the moment they want to step away from whatever it is that they're holding up to be the CEO, to go to a conference, or to focus on the direction for the business or fundraise or what have you, the business house begins to crumble. And so when you're building your business house straight on dirt without good operations or foundation, you can't scale successfully. And if you're not scaling or growing in your business, you're running a really expensive hobby. So I just wanted to like bring that all up into like a nice little bow tie, like a little cherry on top, if you will, when you introduced me, because I'm like, these are things that people don't think about. They don't realize that, oh, if I bring on a sales team or if I bring on team members and I don't have process, I'm bringing them into my chaos and I'm already setting them up for not success. Failure is not going to be great. It's going to cost you more money. You're going to think about wondering if your team members are doing things to your standards. You're going to probably redo their work. So it's like lack of operations costs you dollars when you're inefficient, but it's very insidious and subtle, that leakage. You're not necessarily hemorrhaging. So that is like the biggest point that I would love to drive home. And if any of this like resonated with you, like I would invite you all to come into my world. Like go to our website, www.businesslaidbare.com. Sign up for our newsletter that we can send, weekly tips that you can take to improve your operations. We have like a 50 SOP ideas, standard operating procedures idea guide that you can download. Or if you know that operations are something that you need to work on and you need an expert or a team to help you, let's book a call. Let's chat. We can drop our consult call link as well for you. It's as easy as that. We want to work with people who are fully invested and not like fence sitters because the energy is weird otherwise.
That's awesome. There's so many things that I'd say, yes, I wish I had been working with you for the last 40 years or so, because there are companies that definitely need this. They're not taking advantage of all the things that you have and the things that really that would benefit them, save them money, be more efficient, and allow them to grow. So that's really awesome. I appreciate your time coming on the show today. It was really good to hear from you again and hearing what you have to share. And I hope everybody reaches out for you. Thanks for being a guest today.
Thanks for your time.
You bet. Take care until next episode of the Dr. Digital Podcast. Make sure you subscribe, like, review, and positively tell everyone else as well. Until next time, Deus Vult.